Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our 9th Grassroots Resident-Led Air Quality Town Hall, building the case for EPA Region 3 Administrator Adam Ortiz to visit our region as soon as possible. I'm Howard Rieger, the volunteer convener of the Grassroots Resident-Led Town Halls. During and after this town hall, you'll have a chance to sign a letter to Ortiz urging him to come now. We understand the pressure that the EPA is operating under. In fact, documented in the New York Times today in an article underscoring that the agency has not recovered from an exodus of 1,200 scientists and policy experts during the previous administration that sought to dismantle its operations. On the other hand, Ortiz will find no more appropriate visit for him to make at this time of evolving EPA policy, the implications of which can be seen up close and personal in the Mon and Ohio valleys. By meeting face-to-face with residents of environmental justice communities, which bear the brunt of living close to sources of the greatest air pollution, he will get a real-time picture of the ravages of life in one of the 1% worst places in the USA for cancer, lung, and heart diseases caused by fine particle air pollution. EPA has set a high priority of addressing disparities that EJ communities face, and this visit will enable him to better fulfill that objective. The EPA fully understands the dangers we face, evidenced by its July 28, 2022 EPA website post stating that particles less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter, that's 30 times smaller than the thickness of a human hair, that these fine particles, or PM 2.5, pose the greatest risk to health, getting deep into your lungs, with some even into your bloodstream. Our topography and geography make our region prone to atmospheric inversions, trapping air pollution close to the ground. Viewing this reality, Ortiz will better understand why we are advocating for a stronger annual PM 2.5 standard of 8 micrometers rather than the range of 9 to 10 that EPA is considering. He'll also better grasp why we believe that the 24-hour PM 2.5 standard of 35 micrometers, which they have decided not to change, should be lowered to 25. The current level doesn't take into consideration that in our region, very high exposures often occur overnight and in early morning hours. Because they span 2 days, they don't exceed the daily limit. And in any case, research demonstrates that such high levels of exposure are still a danger to our health. He will also see what makes Greater Pittsburgh the wrong place for industries that emit toxic substances into the air, including so-called green solutions. Hydrogen hubs that use frack gas and carbon sequestration are being promoted by our worst polluters and a non-transparent cross-section of civic and political leadership. This is shaping up to be yet another boondoggle to misdirect our tax dollars. While Ortiz is here, we hope that he will field questions about lax air pollution enforcement and how the adoption of new technologies can overcome these weaknesses at the Allegheny County Health Department. Why, in an era of video footage being admissible in a court of law, are we told by our health department that it can't be used to monitor air pollution violations? Why, in an era of apps for every conceivable purpose and transaction, a time of daily advances in artificial intelligence technology, is our county enforcement mechanism committed to manual oversight, continuing to ignore over 80,000 documented Smell Pittsburgh app odor complaints shared with ACHD by Create Lab at CMU since 2016. Perhaps Ortiz will have answers for why we have an Allegheny County air pollution enforcement system which time after time fails to warn residents of the dangers due to catastrophic failures such as fires and explosions, or why our health department doesn't have a best practices method for reaching the maximum number of residents rather than the pro forma bare minimum. We live in a region in which a tacit agreement out of the public eye assures that leadership at every level which could address the dangers that we face are silenced. We live in a region in which our largest healthcare providers, UPMC and AHN, have refused to respond to our certified letters to their leadership and follow-up calls asking for an opportunity to talk about the excess mortality that we face due to air pollution, in the hope that they might facilitate such a dialogue at the highest level of our community. We live in a region in which the dangers of air pollution are not even on the agenda of the Allegheny Conference on Community Development, a group embodying a cross-section of civic and corporate leadership founded over 75 years ago specifically to address air pollution and environmental conditions impacting living standards in our region. We live in a region in which medical and environmental researchers have been literally driven out of universities and health systems for presenting and acting upon peer-reviewed, fact-based research findings. We live in a region in which our Allegheny County executive has chosen to be a cheerleader for polluting industries, repeatedly and publicly highlighting cherry-picked, unrepresentative air quality statistics to downplay health risks, rather than serving as an advocate for a more forward-looking, health-centered economic base for our region. In recent years, under the overall control of the county executive, our health department has been transformed into an unapproachable public body, stonewalling many of the voices on today's program, making communications and lodging air quality complaints a needlessly difficult process, especially for those with disabilities and those without internet capability. Even for those of us who are computer savvy, the convoluted process without follow-up reporting appears to be the place where complaints go to die. We know that the only way to make a difference is to chart a different course, and we will not be silent. Now, I want to turn over to our program, after which you'll have a chance to hear your own views expressed, and hopefully for us to be able to respond to some of those. Tonight, we'll hear brief, heartfelt testimony from 12 residents of the Mon Valley, Braddock, and Beaver counties, beginning with 5 from Mon Valley. Clairton, which is in the center of the Mon Valley area, located 20 miles south of Pittsburgh on the Mon River, is the home of the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works. Get this, a 121-year-old monster situated on 392 acres, the equivalent of 300 NFL football fields. Clairton Coke Works is well known for its poor maintenance, and it is a site of frequent violations, producing up to 4.3 million tons of coke annually. It is the largest coke plant in the United States. And coke has been determined to be a major source of air pollution in our region for decades. Nearly 90% of the point source cancer risk estimated in Allegheny County is attributable to coke oven emissions, with 90% of those emissions coming from the Clairton facility. So now we're going to begin to hear from folks in the Mon Valley. We're going to start out with Doreen Johnson. Doreen?
Hello?
We're here, you, Doreen.
Oh, okay, because I can't hardly hear y'all. Okay, my name is Doreen Johnson. I'm 65 years old. I've lived in Clairton all my life. I think around, maybe it was 1998, 2008 when I started really noticing different things going on with my body. I had been going to the doctors. They was telling me there was nothing wrong. I thought it was my sinuses. So I had been taking Claritin D for years. Till I got to the point, I was going from one emergency room to the next emergency room to the next emergency room. Jefferson said they couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. I think I went to McKeesport once. What I did, I went downtown to McGee. And when I went to McGee, they had ran all kind of tests. They told me there was something going on in my body, but they didn't know what. That's what they told me. They couldn't tell me. So it became to the point where I could not, it's like I couldn't, nothing could touch my skin. That's how bad it had got. And my son ended up taking me to the emergency room. The doctor at the time who told me there was nothing wrong with me, he actually told me I was a hypochondriac. When he seen me, he told my son to take me directly to Jefferson Hospital. When I got there, they gave me something, and I don't remember anything until the next morning. And when I woke up, I had like 4 doctors around me, and I actually thought I was dying. They did a biopsy. After they did the biopsy, they told me I had something called neurosarcoidosis. And so I was on like 13 different medicines. I'm still on a cancer medication. I'm still taking all kind of medicine. But the one that controls my immune system is a cancer medication called Imuran. I get lesions on my scalp. They come and go. I've had doctors tell me it's the environment. I've had them tell me that I should get my children and grandchildren and move from here. And it's easier said to do. It's easier said to tell someone to do that than for someone to do it, to just pick up. This is my roots. I've been here all my life. And so it costs money to leave here. You know, it's not something I can just pick up and do. I have 5 grandchildren. My oldest granddaughter, she was diagnosed with severe asthma at the age of 10 months. So she's been on steroids all her life. And it hurts me to see her. She's been in and out of the hospital. She's been in intensive care. It really hurts me to see her like that, not being able to breathe. We wear masks all the time. And I ain't going to say COVID was the best thing, but once we had to start wearing masks, it seems like if I'm outside, I have to have on a mask. I can't leave out of my house without having a mask on. She don't go anywhere without having a mask on. It's kind of hard to live and not being able to live. I mean, I'm alive, but I'm really not living because I'm really confined with medication, body aches, you know, some days not being able to get out of the bed. I tried to get disability. It took 2 years for me to get my disability. They put me on prednisone to the point where I had gained I went from 180 pounds to 237 pounds. That's how big I had got. And that's because of the steroids that I was on. So I'm not on the steroids at this moment. Periodically, they put me back on if I have a flare-up. And periodically, like I said, I do have flare-ups. And the hard part is the lesions on my scalp. My hair has fallen out because I am on cancer medication. And my granddaughter, DeVay, she's constantly in pain. You know, she don't participate in any school activities. She's a very intelligent girl, but she don't participate in school activities because a lot of the times she's in pain and she can't do a whole lot of strenuous stuff because of her breathing. I really don't know what more to say. That's my story. And if I could leave here, I would. I'll probably die here, but I want better for my grandchildren.
Thank you so much, Doreen. That's so powerful. And we're so glad that you could share your story with us.
Yeah, and wish you didn't have that story to share. Our next speaker from the Mon Valley will be Art Thomas. Art?
Hello, my name is Art Thomas. I've lived in Clarendon for over 70 years. Doreen Johnson just told my wife's story. My wife also suffers from neurosarcoidosis. It started out as sarcoidosis. When she first got that, like I say, I'm 78 years old, by the way. I was on safety for U.S. SEAL, and I had a chance to go through the Thomas registry. That's something like a computer of the old years, big books. And I looked up sarcoidosis, and it said that sarcoidosis was found basically in the rural South, where they use coal byproducts to suppress the dust on the roads. It was fine for when it was oily, but after the oil dried out, the dust went up in the air and the people breathed it and they got sarcoidosis. Now, I think I found out today that Clarendon Mill is 121 years old. And I did have a little chemistry in high school. And I learned one basic rule: what goes up must come down. And that's been coming down in the city of Clarendon for over 121 years. Come on. And U.S. Steel gets fines. People in Clarendon don't get anything from their fines. I understand one year the health department redecorated their offices with the fine money from U.S. Steel. I can't get enough from U.S. Steel to pay for me taking my wife back and forth to the hospital, pay for the gas. This is ridiculous. And every time you turn around, it's a bad air alert. Also, I was surprised to find out today that we were also in the top 1% for cancer, lung diseases, and there was heart failure too, I believe it was. We're in the top 1% of something, and it's bad. I mean, come on. Something has to give. U.S. Steel can either clean up their act or shut the place down. And that goes for the rest of the facilities in Mon Valley that are putting out pollution. There's supposed to be a big thing about global warming going on. All of our presidents, and well, at least this president, is talking about cleaning the air up. I don't see anything happening in Clarendon Mill. Every time I turn around, it seems like it's getting worse. So, like I say, I used to plant a garden. I can't even plant a garden now. Can't eat the vegetables out of the garden. Used to have fruit trees. I used to know where every fruit tree in Clarendon was when I was young and coming up. Today, I'm out there, a wild peach tree grew up next to a stop sign. I'm out there picking these big peaches. Kid walks past me and says, "Mister, what are you doing?" I says, "I'm picking peaches." He says, "Oh, is that where they come from?" That's how bad it is around here. I mean, I can't think of a fruit tree around. I planted peach trees, cherry trees, everything dies. I even had a pine tree die. I'm about done. I'm fed up with it. And like they said, you can't afford to move out of this place. I get a U.S. pension, and trust me, it's not that much. The way prices are going up today. I'm about done. I'm done with it. I hope that we can get some help from the top and get some definite results on how much stuff is going up in the air and coming down and staying here. I'd like to see some soil samples taken in the fields where our kids play football practice, little league football practice on the field right next to the coke works. I wonder how much of that stuff is lead, arsenic, and so on and so forth. And like I said, I'm tired of it. I'm done.
Well, thank you, Art. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for all of your involvement in these issues over a lot of years, and hopefully we can make a difference. Now you're going to hear from Kiam Ansari. Kiam?
Hello, everyone. I first got introduced to the air quality issues in Pittsburgh shortly after I moved here. I was 17 at the time, getting ready for my first date, which was to be at Kennywood during Fright Night. Was really excited. We were moving from East McKeesport to McKeesport, and it was a beautiful Pittsburgh day. It's 50 degrees. By the end of the day, it was 34 degrees and snowing. We had a little bit of a weather inversion. The air quality alerts went up. I didn't know anything about that. I just moved into the region. By the next day, my asthma had gotten so bad that my lung collapsed. Thankfully, my brother missed the bus and found my lifeless body on the stairs and called the ambulance. Was taken to McKeesport Hospital. Died in the ambulance. They quickly resuscitated me, life flighted me to Children's Hospital, where I had to go into the ICU for 2.5 weeks because my lungs were not responding to the medicine, and it was the only way that they could save me. When I awoke and spoke to the doctor, he nonchalantly told me, "Hey, by the way, it was a bad air quality day. From now on, you're going to have to be aware of those. Whenever the air is bad, I expect you not to leave your house. Expect you to wear a mask from now on. And if you have another asthma attack, we're not sure that we're going to be able to save you because your lungs are so scarred. You're really lucky to make it out of this alive." So all of this was a shock for me. Before I had moved to Pittsburgh, I thought I was growing out of my asthma symptoms, hadn't had an asthma attack in years. And since I've been living here, I don't go anywhere without my inhaler. I wouldn't dare go into the next room without my inhaler. Take it all the time. It's supposed to be for emergencies, and it's become a daily medicine for me now. I go through about an emergency inhaler a month, which is around 200 puffs, which is unheard of. It continues to get worse. One of the scariest moments of my life was, drowning in the air, not knowing what was wrong or why I couldn't breathe. And that sort of started this process where I, tried to learn a little bit more about air quality. And the more I learned, the angrier I got, because it seemed like Allegheny County Health Department and the powers that be would rather take money from big business rather than take care of, people's lives. And the thing that haunts me to this day about that event is that if I did die, if my brother had not found me and called the ambulance in time, there would have been no investigation for murder, right? I would have just been natural cause of death, asthma. And my mother would have came home. She would have sat, blamed it on herself. Why didn't I give him his medicine? Why didn't I know? And I just can't take the thought out of my head of how many other families in the Mon Valley and Pittsburgh have gone through the same exact thing, that have never gotten justice for the illnesses that are forced upon the residents in this area. We suffer in silence while U.S. still makes record profits. And we hope that by sharing our testimony today, that we can get the EPA to take our concerns seriously and to take our health seriously.
Thank you, Cam. What can I say? It's brave testimony. And Okay, we're next going to hear from Melanie Mead, also from the Mon Valley area. Melanie?
Thank you. I just want us to all to take a moment. I know we have very limited time here, but I just thank each of you for being here, and I thank each of you for sharing your story. I hold back tears because we have lived through this and we endure. And like Hyam said, we don't know how many of us can continue on enduring in this way. So we petition Adam Ortiz. We solicit and we beg him to come and visit us directly. Come to Clairton, PA, to Braddock, PA, to West Mifflin, PA. See what the people live through and look out their windows to every day. These emissions that you see, I'm sharing, Mark Dixon is graciously sharing with you, was Sunday morning. So the EPA isn't paying close attention on the weekends. They're definitely not paying attention in the evenings and overnight. In 2005, I was diagnosed with nocturnal epilepsy. I came home to visit my family after living in Washington, D.C. for 2 years. I decided to come home and party with them because we had a reunion during Labor Day weekend. It was called the Clairtonian, where we celebrate being born in Clairton. And people come in from all over the United States. And the bar that I went to is at the base of the mill. And they had it opened in the back so that we could go outside. So I was actually standing right at the parking lot of the mill. And the next morning I awoke in the hospital having been diagnosed with nocturnal epilepsy. There were no drugs found in my system. And I had never known that I was at risk. My family lived here over 120 years ago. That was my paternal grandmother's family. They owned land that was taken over by USX Mill to house families to work in the mill. Like Mr. Art said, our Little League children were just recently practicing across the street from the base entrance of the mill within the last 5 years. We have our mayor, who is a retired worker from Urban Works, speaking up about the importance of USX workers' jobs over the poor health of the community. When we had fires at Clairton USX, Clairton Coke Works, our mayor, our city council, our school administration spoke to the Allegheny County Health Department about the importance of union jobs over the health of the people who put them in those positions. The people in these positions are confused because the Allegheny County Health Department and the EPA haven't made it clear. There's more misinformation and disinformation than truth. I have an aunt who wonders, did she cause her sarcoidosis? And that's why she doesn't come to speak out. I have coaches in our community of Clairton who aren't sure I'm accurate in stating we have a right to clean air, and they have a right to speak out about what they see, what they smell, what they feel. There have been more days that I felt poorly and I didn't get a reading on a poor air quality day than on the days where I did receive it. So even when we receive information about poor air quality days in the red and the orange, there are days when it may say green, but if you ask the people most afflicted, they will tell you they feel as like the air is orange. And we don't have a Clarendon education system that is teaching our children about environmental education. We have wonderful environmental programs through GASP, Group Against Smog and Pollution, through ROCUS. We have wonderful programs that can be incorporated into the curriculum so that these children, their families, their loved ones can all know the truth and take appropriate action. It's cheaper for me to stay than it is for me to move. Number one, because the cost of living is so low, I can't find a cost of living comparable to living next to a steel mill. So my cost of living is going to increase just because I want to live healthier. Isn't that a drag? What it would cost for me to accumulate the monies to carry all of my things. And what is the cost of me leaving my relatives who aren't sure that this air is bad? They just don't believe it. So I ask you, Adam Ortiz, please do the right thing. Let us breathe. Let us breathe the best way we can. Your standards, your policies, your power can change our experience. It will change our experience. And with this action, we can better educate the leaders, the children, their grandparents, to remove any regret and anxiety about why they are here, and also support them in creating a better future for themselves. I hope I've not gone over. There's so much more I have to say, but I thank you.
What you said was moving, genuine, and hopefully when Adam Ortiz comes here, you'll have a chance to share more. Look forward to working with you on that. And now our final speaker from the Mon Valley, Dave Meckel. Dave?
Yes, my name is Dave Meckel. I've lived in Mon Valley now since 1998. That's about 25 years. And after retiring from the Marine Corps and traveling around the world breathing clean air, and I come back to Glassport and I move in here and I have no idea what the air is going to be like. And it didn't really get bad with me until after the fire and their equipment got broken. And now when I cut my grass, I have to stop and take a break because I can't breathe. The air is so thick that you just can't get any oxygen in your lungs. And then I also had, they're defacing my property. They've killed one of my pine trees. They've killed 2 yew bushes. And what I mean by that is when the hydrogen sulfide lays on my maple leaves, it actually burns holes through the leaves in my tree. And naturally, the tree is dying. All my trees are dying. A lot of my bushes are dying. And just like Art said, we can't plant any vegetables. You plant tomatoes, they grow up blighted. You plant peppers, they grow up blighted. The mill puts out this particulate matter that in my backyard, it's 16.7. And hydrogen sulfide is 10 point whatever it was. But that's like 3 and 4 times the legal limit that we're supposed to be breathing. And our state and local leaders are aware of this and they're not doing anything about it. It's like they don't care. It's like they want to get a cut of the money when they fine U.S. Steel. And when U.S. Steel is fined and they disperse the money to the boroughs, I've gone to the borough meeting and asked them, I need an air purifier. Well, we can't give you an air purifier because we have specific guidelines on how to spend that money. And I said, well, how is that? And she said, well, we don't have the letter on hand, but we could show it to you. And I've asked for months to see that letter, and there is no letter. It's a big lie. And I said, what did you spend the money on? She said, well, we bought a new police car, we bought a new maintenance truck, and we bought sewers for our cameras. And we're fixing up our intersections with asphalt. I said, well, what about the residents that need air purifiers? We don't matter. It's all about the boroughs and the people don't matter. That's a problem when the people don't matter. And half the people that I talk to don't even know what they're breathing. And then I explain to them and they go, well, what does that cause? You know, and I said, well, it causes cancer, causes heart disease, causes asthma. Oh, I didn't know that. What number should I call? I said, go online and complain to the health department. But nobody is doing that. We need all the people in the Mon Valley to wake up and start complaining. Quit taking this. U.S. Steel is just wiping their feet on us, and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's totally wrong. That's the best I can do for you right now.
Well,
If
Dave,
you could send somebody over to change the caulking in my windows, I'd really appreciate that, because it used to be white and now it's all black. And it really looks stupid with white windows and black caulking. Thank you. I guess I'm finished.
well, thank you. Thank you. Well, hopefully you're not finished and we have more to talk about during the discussion and certainly with a visit by Adam Ortiz to our region. We're now going to shift to Braddock. And we are going to hear from two residents in Braddock. That is the home of the Edgar Thompson Works of the U.S. Steel, which opened, guess what, 10 years after the Civil War. Can you believe that? 1875. For 147 years. When it was first started, it was a state-of-the-art facility. Well, can you imagine what the state-of-the-art is today? It has a capacity of just under 3 million tons of steel production using furnaces which burn coke produced at the Clairton Coke Works. It's a major source of pollution for Braddock and for all of us around Braddock. So now we're going to hear from Charday Jones, who's a past mayor of Braddock. Charday?
Hello, everyone. My name is Charday Jones. I've lived in Braddock predominantly most of my 33 years of life, except for 1 year I wanted to be a flight attendant and I got to travel the world. And it was my little sabbatical and I would travel around. And I would see all the great things that everyone else had. And I was like, I wish my community had that. So I moved back home and I was like, I want to make my community better. And it's so sad that U.S. Steel has always been in the business of taking advantage of communities, especially communities that want to thrive and not just survive. It even goes back to when there was the big strike at U.S. Steel years and years ago. Black people were the scabs for the U.S. Steel during that strike to keep the U.S. Steel production going. And it's almost like no one cares about the air. And when you look at the statistics that people that have never had breathing problems a day in their life, they move to this area and they develop asthma. I had a family member that never smoked a cigarette in her life and she had lung cancer. And just breathing in the air, the doctor said it was almost unbelievable that it looked like she had smoked cigarettes before. And when you bring up the issue of the air pollution to U.S. Steel, it's almost like it's not as bad as it used to be, is always the response. But just because it's not as bad, the key word in that sentence is it's still bad. There's got to be a better way to not be taking advantage of. But I think that's what it all boils down. We're constantly always being taken advantage of, but we're not getting anything in return. Almost like the fines are a budget line in U.S. Steel's budget. They know that they're going to get fines. I remember the one Christmas where at Clairton Coke Works, they had the fire, and it took them 2 weeks to tell Braddock, hey, 2 weeks ago, we had a fire that affected the air quality. And I think we deserve so much better than what we have. We can't just, and one time I even asked, like, are we getting anything out of this? When it came down to jobs, I asked how many people, 2 years ago, I asked how many people that were 15104 residents worked just at Edgar Thompson, which is over like 300 employees at the time. And they said 11. So the key is, it seems like we're getting taken advantage in every way possible, but we're getting nothing in return. I remember the big fight for fracking when they wanted to frack at US Steel. And I was like, we already have bad air. Why dig in the ground? Why do more? No one is already taking accountability measures for the air. Why let pollute something else? And it was a big uphill fight, but it was a fight worth fighting for, because when it boiled down, they didn't put a fracking well down there. I just hope that the future includes cleaner air and opportunities. Like, this could be a learning opportunity. I've seen green steel being made places. In Canada, Hamilton, Ontario, they make the greenest steel in Canada. That is their steel, that's their steel city. And they have the most waterfalls per capita. And they coexist because of the green situation. So it seems like US Steel doesn't want to go green, because they could if they want. They have enough money to do it. And I just hope the future includes something better for the Mon Valley, because we deserve better. We shouldn't have to be resilient. We shouldn't have to survive when all we want to do is thrive in our day-to-day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Charday. And now we're going to hear from Mary Carey. Mary? Mary, you there? We'll give Mary one more moment, and then we'll just move on to Beaver. And if we need to, we can come back to Mary. Okay, well, let's do that so we can respect the time of everybody on this call and have the sufficient moment for us to have full discussion. So just a few words about Beaver. We're going to hear from 5 residents of Beaver. It's the home of the new Shell plastic plant, which was built with $1.6 billion of state tax subsidy, a project that we're going to be paying for the next 25 years. And we're going to pay for it with our tax dollars, as well as in many other ways in terms of the impact that it's going to have on our health. The Beaver is 30 miles northwest of Pittsburgh. It is, by the way, that plant is just about on a plot of land the same as Clairton Coke Works, 386 acres. It opened last fall, operated for only a couple of months. It wasn't even at full capacity, and it already exceeded its yearly maximum level of emissions of volatile organic compounds, all of which are bad for our health. And we're going to hear from 5 people in Beaver. Valerie Kennedy is going to be the first one. Valerie?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for including me. Just a little bit of background for me so that you understand where I'm coming from. I grew up in Beaver
Valerie,
County.
can you start your video?
Yes.
We'd love to see you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. I've taken notes, so I'm gonna look at my notes a little bit so I don't forget anything. I grew up in Beaver County. I graduated from Black Hawk High School, went to college at Penn State, and I moved away from Beaver County for about 20 years. And during that time, I lived in Utah. I lived in Long Island, New York, out on the South Shore, almost at the end near Montauk. I lived in a town called Sag Harbor. And then I moved back to Pittsburgh and eventually moved back into Beaver County. So I have some perspective from living other places. Decided in 2012 to buy a house in downtown Beaver, and my home is 2 blocks back from River Road. And if any of you are familiar, River Road is a beautiful road along the river, and up until the shell plant was being constructed, it was, maybe it still is, I don't think so, one of the most coveted neighborhoods in Beaver County. My home is a very modest home, but a lot of the homes on River Road average maybe $500,000 to $1.5 million. And now when you walk down River Road, you can see the shell plant and all of the negative impact that shell has put upon our area. I just retired a year ago. I was an English teacher in Beaver County, and for about 23 years was a second career. I've always been interested in environmental issues. And so the environmental science teacher and I used to do cross-curricular lessons. And my first, I guess, understanding of how uninformed many Beaver County residents are about the poor environment in our area was teaching a cross-curricular assignment about Little Blue in our area, which is a waste dump for the Bruce Mansfield plant in the area, those of you that are familiar with it. And the environmental science teacher and I did a couple of articles, and her job was to teach the science, and my job was to help the children understand how to read an article like that and extract facts and statistics and help them be able to read, scientific articles a little bit better, because the state tests asked them to do that. But at the same time, I felt the kids were really learning something valuable. What I learned was how many residents in the school district where I taught who live in the shadow of Little Blue didn't even know that Little Blue exists. And I don't want to take the time to go into what Little Blue is all about, but if you look it up, you will see what a toxic dump it is. And, what has happened and what's going on and has gone on with that site. I guess what I would say is lately with the shell plant and just watching it really ruin the aesthetics of the surrounding communities, I have decided to get involved in this because it means something to me, because I do love this area. As I said, I grew up here. I also have been asked to be part of a Pitt University group, and I'm working with a group of people who are doing research in Beaver and Allegheny County into the pollution in our rivers and air. And I will tell you that some of the things I'm learning from the professors and the researchers at Pitt are pretty daunting and upsetting. And so I'm learning, even more information through them. And it's very frustrating. So I guess the point for me here tonight, I have allergies like just about everybody else that seems in the area. But I guess my point is just coming at it from a couple of different viewpoints, I guess, which is the plant is definitely going to have a negative impact on housing values here. That is certainly not the first concern. The first concern is absolutely health and well-being. But those of us that own homes here, and again, my house is not expensive. I'm a retired school teacher, and prior to that, I had another career. But I never earned a lot of money, but I was able to get a home. That home means something to me, and the fact that I'm very worried about what's going to become of my community, the community of Beaver, and the housing values there is important to me and concerning, and I know it is for other people. The other point that I'd like to make this evening is just, I'm learning from very many sources, and just from talking with people, from working in the community and being part of these groups, how uninformed the residents are about the negative health and environmental impacts of the Shell plant, and of course, the other entities that we're talking about tonight. But people just don't know. And at times it feels like they don't care. But I truly believe there's, and I'm going to use the word, I think there's a lot of ignorance. People were told that the Shell plant was going to bring a lot of jobs to the area, and that certainly hasn't materialized. I lived, a lot of the homes around my house are rental homes, and they were occupied by Shell workers who had come in from all over the country. Those people came, did their jobs, and left. The resulting jobs are many of them were not given to Beaver County residents.
Valerie, can we try to wrap it up? Because
yes. At the end of the day, the health concerns are certainly the number one issue, but there are many other issues that we could look at that are having a negative impact on our county and surrounding counties. And I am one person that I would like this to be more of a concern for other folks, and anything I can do to get the word out is important to me. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of this. Stay on during the dialogue afterwards, and be a chance to perhaps field some questions. Next, we're going to hear from Bob Schmetzer. Bob?
Hi, Howard and everyone. I'm Bob Schmetzer from South Heights in Beaver County, and I'd like to talk about the Shell petrochemical cracker plant. And BCMAC, the Beaver County Marcellus Awareness Community, has been around for quite a few years now, and it has exposed the dangers of the process from seismic testing, Marcellus and Utica drilling, and pipelines.
Bob, you've muted yourself. Bob, you've muted yourself.
Okay, must have bumped something. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's get with it. Yeah, we were covering compressor stations, the explosions in Beaver County and other places, cracker plant. And one of the things that I like to point out is what's missing from the evidence is the dangers of radioactive contamination from the Shell gas, all them gases, from the beginning to the end of the process. The industry and elected officials ignore the dangers, even after they know of the ill effects. Marcellus Shell is a uranium find. A 1960 study from the U.S. Department of the Interior showed that. The results were turned over to the U.S. Atomic Energy Agency. And in Pennsylvania, we have Pennsylvania DEP is supposed to oversee that. And there is a Bureau of Radiation Protection And they say building on the past to shape the future. Now, every organization has a mission statement. And those mission statements state what that organization's all about and what they're supposed to do. And it says our mission is to safeguard the public health and safety and the environment from harmful and unwanted, unnecessary, or inappropriate exposure from controllable radiation sources. And they said they lead by example. The other part that I wanted to get into was the American Lung Association said the air in this geographic area is a double F. And I asked the DEP at a public meeting, are they going to wait until the air is 27F before they did anything? And of course, at that public meeting there with the chairman of Shell of the plant down here, there was no answer from anybody. It was just like it was a no starter. The cracker plant will emit many tons of toxic air throughout the geographical area. Why I'm upset is most of my family died from cancer, lung, and heart disease, mostly coming from the steel industry pollution. And now comes the chemical plant, the sky dump on top of a double F air quality, even after the closure of the steel mills. Now we have VOCs, hazardous air pollutions, benzene, and formaldehyde. And I see my time's up. So I'd like to share that information with you, and we're going to be moving forward. And we'll be sure to tell that to the secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We're now going to hear three presentations which were videoed. They're brief, but they're meaningful. From Lisa Lieb-Casali, Rachel Meyer, and Sister Carrie Pohl, all from Beaver area. And Mark Dixon is going to run those videos, and then we'll turn it over to all of you.
Great. Thanks, Howard. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'm a resident of Vanport Township. I live just across the Ohio River from the Shell cracker plant, and I can actually see the plant from my home. At all hours of the day, I can see steam rising from the plant, and on most days, it rises to a certain point, and then it kind of settles in the air over my house and the houses of my neighbors. When the plant flares, I can see the orange glow from my kitchen, and it's very unsettling. It seriously makes me question if this area is a suitable place to raise a family. I don't have any children yet, but I do think it's pretty sad that I have to factor in air quality when thinking about when or where to start having kids. Otherwise, Vanport and Beaver are great places to live. My husband and I love our neighbors. We love our house. We love the shops and the restaurants in Beaver, but I'm just not entirely sure that it's worth risking, our future children getting asthma from pollution from the cracker plant, or, myself or my husband getting COPD or heart disease or cancer down the road from being exposed to pollution long term. I don't really think that those are things that I should have to consider. I think that I should have the right to breathe clean air, but right now I don't have that. So I've been thinking a lot about moving from my home in Vanport, maybe somewhere further away from the cracker plant, but I know that that really wouldn't fix the issue of poor air quality. The truth is that the pollution from the cracker plant isn't just an isolated problem. The Shell cracker plant is impacting the air quality of the entire Pittsburgh region. And I want to live in southwestern Pennsylvania. This is where I grew up, and this is where my entire family lives. And I don't think I should have to choose between, a place that I love and good air quality. So I don't know. I just feel like I'm doing everything that I know how to do in order to keep myself healthy. I eat healthy foods. I exercise regularly. I'm active, but I can't control the quality of the air that I breathe. So we need help from our government, and we need corporations to take responsibility in order to ensure the health of its citizens. So those are just some of my thoughts, but thank you very much for listening.
Hi, I'm Rachel Meyer. I live in Beaver County. We are surrounded here by oil and gas infrastructure. There's at least 30 wells and a compressor station in the township where I live. I've heard of young people in our township having leukemia. There's a lot of people who have suffered with cancer and have respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. Right now, I have a friend who has been suffering from a cough and fatigue for months, and the doctors can't figure out why. I personally have days when my asthma bothers me and I don't know why, but I have learned that all of this infrastructure around me creates a lot of air pollution and could be triggering my asthma. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I've become very concerned about how this pollution is affecting her. I don't want her to end up with asthma too, and I certainly worry how the air pollution could be negatively affecting her developing body in other ways as well. Now we have the cracker plant here in Beaver County. It's about 8 miles from me as the crow flies. I see it at night, it glows. I look out my back door and sometimes I feel like I'm in a bad dream. It lights up the sky. There's been times where a large portion of the sky is orangish red from all the flaring that they do. And it's estimated that in order to provide ethane for this plant, there's going to be a need for 1,000 new fracked wells every 3 to 5 years, adding to this air pollution around us, in addition to the massive emissions from the plant itself. So I'm very concerned about the health effects of its pollution and the increased demand for fracking that it'll create. Every time I drive past the plant, I'm amazed at how big it is. It's alarming to see it. It's something you really have to see for yourself. It's 800 acres, or big enough to cover 605 football fields. So it's something you need to see up close and in person. It's emitting large amounts of climate warming, carbon dioxide, and many health-harming toxic chemicals, such as benzene and ethylene oxide, which have been specifically shown to cause cancer. Beaver County and Allegheny County already have a high cancer rate compared to the rest of the country. And children living near petrochemical facilities are at a higher risk for leukemia. There's also the particulate matter, which is causing respiratory and cardiovascular disease throughout our region. I know the EPA is looking at particulate matter limits, tightening them to no higher than 8 micrograms per cubic meter for the annual emissions would save lives, and lowering the daily emission limits is also really crucial. We're already seeing highly polluting short-term events from Shell's cracker plant. People living close to the plant are reporting new sinus issues, which may be a warning of more serious health issues to come. Our community's efforts to hold Shell accountable need to be supported. Shell is not taking responsibility for the damage they are doing to our environment and to people's health. In the 2 months since they became operational, they've had 2 notices of violation from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and one was for exceeding their annual rolling limit for VOCs already. They've reported 5 malfunctions and had numerous flaring events. Yet the plant's environmental manager, had the nerve to say that we don't have an impact. And more recently, their spokesperson has said that they are working to ensure our operations have no negative impact on people or the environment, when this is clearly impossible. It comes down to this. People need to see what's happening here, and the polluters need to be held accountable.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Pohl, and I'm a member of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Baden, Pennsylvania, which is a community of women religious within the Roman Catholic faith tradition. I'm also a registered nurse. My faith teaches that a healthy environment is the right of every human being. The Pennsylvania Constitution states that the people have a right to clean air and pure water. As I would imagine you're already aware, air pollution is associated with a greater risk of Alzheimer's disease, as well as COPD, lung cancer, and cardiovascular diseases. Given our region's strong history of polluted air, it comes as no surprise that according to Pennsylvania Department of Health data, residents of both Beaver County and those of Allegheny County suffer disproportionate levels of lung cancer and are more likely than Pennsylvanians in the rest of the Commonwealth to die of dementia, heart disease, and chronic respiratory diseases. Here in Beaver County, we live in the shadow of a massive petrochemical plant that had already exceeded its 12-month rolling total emission limitations of volatile organic compounds twice before it became fully operational this past November. But the petrochemical facility and its pollution doesn't just exist in Potter Township. The petrochemical facility is being built all around us, and each part contributes to the cumulative pollution that is sickening and killing residents here. Pollution comes from the hundreds or maybe even thousands of gas wells being drilled in our area to feed that plant. It comes from the cryogenic facilities, the compressor stations, from the thousands of miles, maybe even tens of thousands of miles of pipeline. Pollution is coming from the barge traffic hauling frac sand, from the truck traffic hauling frac waste, and from the trains hauling pipeline pieces and plastic nurdles. The pollution doesn't just come during normal operations, however. Our region also seems to experience more than its share of petrochemical disasters. Just within the past 5 years, Butler County had a compressor station explode, Washington County had a cryogenic facility explode, and Beaver County had a 24-inch gas pipeline explode. In light of that, I invite EPA Region 3 Administrator Adam Ortiz to come to southwestern Pennsylvania and visit those of us living within this enormous petrochemical facility. Thank you.
Well, thanks to all of our presenters. Just a few general words about what we envision for the future with our town halls, and then we'll turn it over to you. We're hoping to have a town hall somewhere toward the end of March, which would be a candidate forum for the new Allegheny County Executive. There's a number of people running for that office, and the Allegheny County Executive, as you heard in my opening remarks, control a tremendous amount of the operations of the Allegheny County Health Department and the enforcement or lack of enforcement that takes place here. We also hope to have a May town hall, which would be in conjunction with an organization called Clean Med 23, which will be held in Pittsburgh, May 23 to 25. And it's a consortium of hundreds of healthcare providers that focus on taking volatile substances out of their operations, but have not addressed the key issues that we are concerned about in terms of air pollution. Hopefully we can make a difference in that. Now I just want to turn it over to you. We have had a number of comments in the chat, some focused on our need to have perhaps some more demonstrations, which we have had in the past, which tailed off during the COVID crisis. Maybe there's more to be done in that. Talking about how we can take the messages today. By the way, we've had 113 people sign our letter to Ortiz. We picked up about 60 since we began this town hall. And I hope you will share that letter with your friends and colleagues, relatives who live in this area and who do care about the problems that we face. Getting Ortiz here will be a big victory for all of us. So, turning it back to you, all of you. Anybody want to break the ice? I did put the letter, link to the chat in the chat. Also, you're looking at the screen right now. You can see the where you can sign the letter, but I'll put it in the chat again.
This is Melanie Mead speaking, and I was wondering if the Beaver Cracker plant or those in that area could in some way begin to monitor violent crimes. I think that's something that I'd like to work on. I didn't get to mention it in my speech because I was distracted by all of what everyone else was saying. But we had a young man shot and killed during an orange quality day. I believe it was last week. And another young man was found during poor air quality in a ditch, and he had been shot 3 times. The first young man that I mentioned was 13 years old, and the missing young man whose body was found was 26 years old. Clairton has seen a large number of death shootings by people who know each other. And in Germany and France, that research has been studied, and they found links where you can see increased violent crime linked to increased air pollution. So I would like to unite with groups, because I think that until we have the research or begin to start to collect the data, we won't have a leg to stand on. And the fact that, you know, the images, the real-time images from for USX are not being used in litigation make it terribly difficult. I have been registered as a smoke reader through GASP. So I participated in a smoke reading training, and I do the best that I can. But I know that many of the families here in the community have to work long hours, 12-hour shifts. Many of them are sick themselves. So to put the onus on the people living next to the industry to prove that the industry is wrong is really difficult. And if we could find other ways, or maybe collaborate with the social justice movement, or make, you know, a clear line between how these movements all interconnect, that would be great. And if anyone from out in Beaver would like to meet up with me or talk, I'd be willing to talk to you guys. Thank you for this. Thank you for sharing this. And I hear each and every one of you. And I just want you all to remember to go slow and steady. This process has taught me a lot, but I do know that it's worth it. And I thank you all for this opportunity.
Yeah, and I suggest, why don't you put your email in the chat, so anybody who does want to communicate with you can do so offline directly. I will also mention that environmental justice, although it's natural to default to the notion that it's all about environmental pollution, environmental justice goes well beyond that, to communities that have been hollowed out, to economic issues, other issues. So it's about more than just the environment. It's everything about that environment that makes those very challenging places to live. So I thank you for your comments. And thanks for putting your email in the chat.
Howard?
Yeah.
This is Bob Schmutzer. Hey, you would think with the unions and their workers, they're the first ones that are closest to the pollution. But I think some of the studies that have come out is that they're only there 8 hours a day, but the surrounding communities are there 24 hours a day. You could have short-term heavy pollution exposure versus exposure long-term outside of the plant. And I think those factors have to be told to the secretary, that not only there should be some type of trail up of the workers that work in the Coke plant there in Clairton or the cracker plant in Beaver, how does that fare with the comparison of short-term exposure, 8 hours a day, and they go home somewhere else, get out of the area, and people that have to live there that don't go into the plant? I think those factors have a lot to do with your health and how you're going to survive. So some of those things are really important, and I think it's worth talking about.
I agree. There have been labor groups that we've actually featured at a town hall. Occasionally there is somebody who's actively still engaged. Actually, one of the women was still working at the Clairton Coke Works. Many of them are retired. They tied to, I think, pretty much the Battle of Homestead, which of course is a historic event, tragic historic event. But the Battle of Homestead has another equation to it, and that is what went on with U.S. Steel when it closed down the Homestead Works. Barbara, I see you have your hand up.
About 6 or 7 years ago, we were blessed to be able to shut down Shenango Coke Works. And we spent a couple years meeting with the head of Shenango, which was DTE out of Michigan. But we actually invited the workers from Shenango at that time when they were still operating and mentioned the health conditions that we knew that were identified from them. They were working with it. We found out afterwards there were people dying and the company hid the death certificate. The bottom line is all they cared about was losing their jobs. We were taking away their jobs. The health issues were not part of it. And EPA came into the town. We talked about this last night on Maren Cook's thing. They came in, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, down at the August Wilson building. And I don't know, many of us that look like they're about 100 lined up to talk. The U.S. Steel workers came out and they scared the living bejesus of me as they were marching down the street 6 and 8 wide. I mean, they're dug in and they're going to fight big time. It's always about money. Until we get our priorities as a world staked up on health and not the almighty dollar, it's an overwhelming issue that people only think about the money and not the consequences of living with that.
True. If you think about the money issues that was raised in a couple of those commentaries about the Shell ethylene cracker plant, you can focus on the fact that the jobs didn't really redound to the benefit of people from Beaver County. It will be a moneymaker, but it'll be a moneymaker for the investors and stockholders in Shell, not for the community that's going to pay the price, not just in terms of health, which is tragic, but in terms of having paid a good share of the bill for building that place through the state of Pennsylvania. So
that's why it's imperative that we get leaders taking Fitzgerald's place who have the priorities instead and not just be focusing on the value of bringing in industry, the value of people. We need to focus on that.
And there are industries that one could bring in that don't create these kind of create that kind of havoc on communities. All of the kinds of industries that really are future oriented. That's not where our region is positioned. You know, I can understand 150 years ago when the steel industry essentially began here, we didn't really have any idea of what the environmental cost of that would be. But today we do. That industry is down to a minimal presence in the Mon Valley. And if it weren't for that coke plant, we would be pretty much talking a different story here. But the fact of life is it's there. It's the biggest in the country. It plagues us. And they're going to run that thing into the ground if they have the opportunity to do so. So our hope is, I think you're right, electing the right Allegheny County executive, and hope that what we think is the right person doesn't get neutralized by the the powers that be, so to speak, and that in conjunction with a somewhat more proactive EPA, once they can build up their capacity again, hopefully can make a difference. That's what we have to continue to try to focus on. Any other comments?
How do I comment? I have a question.
Your question?
Yes. Where does the fine money go? When the company gets fined, where does that money go?
When the company gets fined, it goes into a clean air fund, of which I think there's now about $11 million in that fund. And the Allegheny County Health Department is notorious for either trying to figure out how to grab that fund for its own operational purposes, or to just let it sit there. It's tried to use some of those funds to renovate their buildings. There was tremendous pushback. They didn't do that. Right now, there's a proposal. Actually, it was on the table today at a regulation subcommittee that conveniently the Allegheny County Health Department scheduled in conflict with this town hall. They knew exactly what they were doing. That proposal was to take up to 25% of the Clean Air Fund each year to apply it to their operations. That got defeated in the regulations committee by everybody. It was a unanimous decision to defeat that, and they brought it back today. So I don't know what the results of that meeting today would be, but the story around the Allegheny Health Department, as Allegheny County Health Department, has continually been, well, we don't get proposals for these funds. That's baloney. The fact of life is they do not want to make that money available to help the people in the community. Should be going to Clareton and Braddock and elsewhere to buy air filters for their homes. They don't want to do that. And then beyond that, I think we have the general problem of an Allegheny County Health Department that is underfunded. And why is it underfunded? We're building an airport for $1.25 billion or $1 million that we don't even need. And yet we can't figure out how to fund our health department, which I think doesn't have a budget much beyond $12 or $15 million a year. A good portion of which, $6 or $7 million, comes from fees from restaurants and other permitting. So the fact of life is we want to run it on the cheap. We really do not want to be effective. And that ties into I think the interlocking directorate that we have in this community that has decided that its future is tied to the heavy polluting industries. I understand why there was that decision back when U.S. Steel was the largest corporation in the world. It is far from the largest corporation in the world today, but bad habits die hard.
Well, the reason I asked was because the Christmas time pollution, that when that factory exploded, that killed a number of evergreen trees in my neighborhood. And these are standing trees that are dangerous. They're going to fall down. I was wondering if there's a possibility of using some of that money to cut these trees down and make it safe.
Well, it's a good point that you make, and perhaps there's a way we could figure out how to work with you to get such a proposal submitted from the residents in your area. That fire and explosion took place in 2018, Christmas Eve. We have a whole series of horrible events that happen on holidays. My assumption is it's because the mills and other facilities are understaffed, but that fire took place. I mean, it took a long time till anybody got to the bottom of it, was because of poor maintenance in the facility. Things fell off the roof of the facility and caused an explosion and a fire. Well, what kind of a company is that allows its place to completely degrade like that? We've had that same story with the Metallico fire that took place on Neville Island not all that long ago. And we have the health department saying, well, if you have an issue, talk to the fire department. It's not our problem. Well, what do you mean it's not your problem? Your job is to enforce environmental regulations. They don't do that effectively. And they don't have any modern methodology that allows them to do a more effective job. So that's part of the issue we're trying to take on. But I think coming up with a proposal from you and your neighbors would be a good idea.
Well, last time I contacted the health department, it was Mr. Goodwin, and his answer to me was he's going to ask his uncle down there that runs U.S. Steel Coke Works what was going on.
Well, right now, if you tried to contact the health department, you can't contact anybody there except one individual. They've cut off all communications with members of their staff from outside the health department. So it's another issue. If you want to put your contact information in the chat, we can get in touch with you and see what we might be able to achieve together.
Okay.
Or I'll give you my email address and just send me an email right now.
I think that would be better.
There you go. You got my email address. You just copy that.
I also want to highlight, there's lots of really great chat in the chat there. Natisha Washington mentioned the Community Benefit Trust. And I think there was a link posted for that as well. And then Melanie has some comments about that as well. And so just make sure folks take a look at the chat. It's really filling up with great commentary.
I also wanted to add that Sinan has put in the chat the GASP commentary about how I believe it will explain the clean air funds and the requirements there. If you cannot access it in the chat, you can Google GASP, Group Against Smog and Pollution, and clean air funds. And I believe it'll pull this same article up for you to have a better understanding about the requirements, which are vague. And as I just want to say, as Natisha had mentioned, the Community Benefit Trust, for me, it doesn't work when the people most connected to the industry are in charge of who gets to speak about the Community Benefit Trust. I've never been invited to a meeting to even know that we have people discussing community benefit trusts. So things sound nice, but they aren't, and they aren't kind either. So we need to be clear about what something sounds like and what it really is when it comes to what's being done in the community.
I agree with you. And the Community Benefit Trust has been pointed out is the repository of fines from U.S. Steel and elsewhere. Allows U.S. Steel to masquerade as though it's some great philanthropic organization giving back to the communities. It's tragic, and it gets misdirected, as we heard, to buy police cars, to asphalt streets. I mean, that may be the stuff that needs to be done, but that is not what a Community Benefit Trust is for. And U.S. Steel should have no role of determining where that money goes. So if that's it, we picked up.
Brian has his hand up. Okay. Brian Jews. Brian, go ahead. If you unmute yourself, your hand is up, unless you didn't mean to put your hand up. Brian, you're still muted.
Okay.
Great.
I sat in on the regulations subcommittee meeting at the health department this evening, concurrently as I sat in on this meeting. As Howard indicated, they continue to debate the use of clean air funds for operating costs within the department. These debates have been going on for months now. All in all, as you say, it's a disaster. We would expect operating costs for all county departments to be provided out of the general fund. We need to see something done at the executive level to properly fund the health department. That's one point. The other point is we need to aim high. The WHO standard is now 5, not 25, which was the old WHO standard. We're at 34. We need to aim high. We need to suggest en masse 5, not 25, full well knowing they'll knock that down. Secondly, we need to get more involved in the grassroots, more involved within committees at the health department, within the subcommittees at the health department, en masse, in their face. Many people at these sessions. The session tonight, the regulation subcommittee, was limited to maybe 10 people, only 1 or 2 of us from the general public. We need to generate a voice, a community within the health department. This is very important, grassroots. What you're doing tonight, Town Hall, is fantastic. The articulation of the issues here has been phenomenal. But we need to take it a step further to the grassroots. For example, I commented to the episodal rules, which has since been adopted by the health department for the Mon Valley. Part of my commentary had to do with the watch and warnings regs under that rule. I suggested that unless we triggered a watch well below the standard, it was all of no purpose. Unless we trigger this before we hit the standard, there's nothing to be gained. Industry, et cetera, must begin to knock down pollution levels before we hit the standard. This rule is fundamentally flawed and hence a reason for the continued Mon Valley alerts. Along those lines, all of you who are not now signed up to Allegheny Alerts need to go online and sign up for Allegheny Alerts and receive a phone call for all those alerts and respond to them appropriately. But again, grassroots involvement is real important. I thank you. That's my message. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you, Brian. Clearly, go on. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Howard. I just put a link to the signing up for Allegheny Alerts in the chat just now. It's kind of hard to find, so I just put the link.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond I think the key here is the plan. As you say, some of these issues just get talked about endlessly at committees. The plan is to see if they can just wear people down. Eventually people go away. We're not going to go away. And I agree with you, the more we can broaden this out, the more we can involve the grassroots, the more we can get that message out. And hopefully with a change of leadership that's coming up at the health department and at the county, we have a hope of making some difference. Melanie.
I hope so.
I want to again remind you all that this work is it's overwhelming. And I reach out to you as a naturopath. I reach out to you as someone who has buried every one of her immediate family members, from cancer to cardiovascular. I don't have or know how to start this, but if we could create a care group, a support group of people who join these town halls, I'd be for it. I just want us to remember we need to be slow and steady. Anger affects our heart, our kidneys, our lungs, and these institutions have more power. So we have to be slow and steady. We have to check in with ourselves and see, are we getting headaches? Are we getting overwhelmed? And take a pause, because we need you here. Without you here, the fight may not exist without you. So please, let's find a way to reach out and talk to each other, even if it's learning to take 3 breaths, 5 breaths. And what are you thankful for? Even if we can come together for that on this journey, we need to. It's important for your life and the life of those, your loved ones. Please keep that in mind. and I'm available to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Anybody else? If not, I really thank all the presenters and those of you who spoke during this period. We plan to stay in touch. We're not going anywhere. And I think that we can, to a certain extent, build upon all of the good comments that were made today. We have 11 people who spoke. There were some problems with Mary Carey's internet connection, but we'll rope her in, perhaps find a way to share that information on a brief video. And stay tuned for information about the next town hall in March. And we thank you all for being here and really appreciate the fact that we're all on the same page here.